Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the NCN Hockey channel. And today's video we got a couple of things to discuss, including a signing over in Tampa Bay. We've got a couple of updates on some veteran players, including Phil Kessel and Zach Parise. We also got a couple more PTOs to take a look at. A couple of captains have been named in West Canada. And we got a couple of trade rumors for things we could see later into the season, closer towards the deadline, for around teams like the Edmonton Oilers, Toronto Maple Leafs, Buffalo Sabres, and the Pittsburgh Penguins. We'll go to all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the NCN Hockey channel. Now, as usual, I'm going to kick things off today by discussing a couple of signings that have happened from around the NHL. Only one signing over the past couple of days since we last talked on Saturday. It was a really weird signing. There was a big situation there with the Tampa Bay Lightning. So earlier in the season, just around the start of the free agency, the Tampa Bay Lightning signed bomb 6'4" Josh Archibald to a 2-year deal with $800,000 AAV. He looked like he was going to be a good bomb 6 forward. He did really well last year, so it was a really good signing in my opinion. But just a little while ago, on Saturday, he was placed on unconditional waivers for the purpose of contract termination. Now, that was a really big surprise given the fact that Archibald had just signed a little while ago. But Archibald made it known to the team that he was not going to be attending training camp due to personal reasons. He has had injury problems in the past, so I do wonder if that's related to this. But it was really just a weird situation. So Archibald placed in unconditional waivers. He cleared unconditional waivers. His contract was terminated. So Archibald, who had a 2-year, $800,000 deal earlier in the offseason to be a good bomb 6'4" for Tampa, is no longer with the Bolts anymore. So the Bolts had a little bit more cap space to work with. And they went out and they got in free agency. And they went out and signed Tyler Motte to a 1-year deal with the AAV of $800,000. So basically, they're paying Tyler Motte what they were going to pay Josh Archibald, so it's basically money in, money out for them. I think they probably wouldn't have signed Motte if not for the fact that Archibald said that he wasn't going to be attending training camp and he doesn't want to play at this point in time. So definitely, it was a really interesting situation, but it's bomb 6 forward in, bomb 6 forward out, so not too bad of a swap. And in my opinion, Motte's probably a little bit more better than Archibald. Archibald's a decent bomb 6 forward. He's shown that in the past couple of years. But I do think Motte has bigger upside. Motte's a really good player. He can play third-line minutes if he need be. He can play fourth-line minutes. He's done really well playing with teams like Vancouver in the past, the Rangers, the Senators over the past couple of years too. So he's done really well over the past couple of years. He can be third-line player if you need him to be. He can be a fourth-line player. He's a really versatile forward and a really good addition there for Tampa. So for a team who's cap-strapped, needs some bomb 6 forwards, someone who could possibly put on the third, fourth line, with Archibald now leaving, I think Motte's a fantastic replacement. So Bolt signed Motte, 1 year, $800,000, not too big of a risk. He'll help them fill in the bomb 6 role, and I think Motte should definitely be a fantastic forward there for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So really good signing there for the Bolts. Going over to a couple of PTO updates. We've had 4 quick PTO updates to talk about here. Since we last talked on Saturday, for the Carolina Hurricanes, they signed 2 players, Kiefer Bellows and Jaden Hablgewachs, to a PTO. The Pittsburgh Penguins have signed forward Colin White to a PTO, and the New York Islanders have signed forward Jackson Cates to a PTO. So for the Carolina Hurricanes, they signed Bellows and Hablgewachs to a PTO. Jaden Hablgewachs, a former prospect, if I'm correct, of the San Jose Sharks. Decent, a top 6 AHL forward. He's probably not an NHL forward at this point in time, and the Canes also have a really deep forward group, so I would think it would be extremely challenging for Hablgewachs to make the a 2-way contract even for the Canes. So I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't get any sort of NHL contract out of his PTO opportunity, but at least he's going to camp on a PTO. Maybe something happens, maybe he's able to get a contract. We'll have to wait and see, but I think he's one of the lesser ones to get a contract. Kiefer Bellows, former first-round pick, has not done very well over the past couple of years. He can be a serviceable bomb 6 forward, as he's shown in the past with teams like the Islanders and the Flyers. So I would not be overly shocked if he showed some really good things in camp, if he was able to work his way into an NHL 2-way contract. But I also wouldn't be too shocked if he did not get any sort of NHL contract. So another situation we're going to have to be watching out for. But Bellows, Hablgewachs, both good, maybe spare NHL forwards, AHL forwards, who could get 2-way NHL contracts. they're going to be joining Nick Shore and Nathan Boileau on PTOs in the Carolina Hurricanes organization. So interesting PTO signings there from the Canes. The Pittsburgh Penguins signed Colin White. That's a really good PTO signing in my opinion. The Penguins could use some bottom six forward help if they can make the money work. I think White may be able to fit in on like a cheap two-way NHL contract in the bottom six. White's played with the Senators for the majority of his career. Played with Florida this past year. He's been a decent bottom six forward, but not anything special. So hopefully he can get an opportunity to make a good impact with the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's still a really good bottom six forward. He's been able to play like third, fourth line minutes over the past couple of years. So I wouldn't be overly shocked. He does well in training camp, gets a two-way contract. Maybe he's able to make it like a bottom six role for the Penguins. I wouldn't be overly shocked if that happens. So White's going to be a name to watch out for over the next couple of weeks to see if he's able to turn the PTO into a two-way contract. Also, you got the Islanders signing Jackson Cates to a PTO. Just sort of like Hablgewachs, not a guy who's most likely going to get a two-way NHL contract. Decent AHL player, can be a call-up option if need be. Not really someone who's going to be an everyday NHL player. So, once again, just like Hablgewachs, Cates I could see get a two-way contract, maybe sent to the minors, but I wouldn't be overly shocked if Cates didn't get anything out of his PTO opportunity. So, once again, former PTO signings, Bellows, Hablgewachs in Carolina, the Islanders get Cates, and the Penguins get White. And I think out of all of those four, White probably has the best opportunity to turn his PTO into a two-way contract, then probably Bellows in Carolina. So some pretty good PTO options there from some of these teams, but definitely interesting to see which of these guys winds up getting a two-way contract and which of them aren't able to convert their PTO into a new deal. So going to be interesting to see the four new PTO signings in New York, Carolina, and Pittsburgh. As the PTO counter is now up to 31 PTOs, and we probably still have a couple more before the season starts. So still going to be interesting to see who else signs PTOs before season starts, but for the time being, Cates, White, Bellows, and Hablgewachs are the only ones that have signed over the past couple of days, so that's your PTO update for the time being. We got a couple pieces of news to talk about here. First, this was mentioned last week. I never got around to it. I want to mention it again this week. Last week, there was a couple of reports, including one by Elliot Friedman, talking about Phil Kessel. Now, Phil Kessel went to Vegas last year on a one-year contract, continued on his Ironman streak, continued playing regular season games. He played all 82 games last year to continue his Ironman streak. Ironman streak being playing consecutive games in the NHL without missing any time. He also started playing in the playoffs, but towards the later part of the playoffs, he started to become a healthy scratch. That doesn't contribute to the Ironman streak, but he definitely did help the Golden Knights in the regular season really well. At times in the playoffs, he was a really good bottom six forward, and he helped the Golden Knights to win the Stanley Cup and help himself earn his third Stanley Cup of his career. So he was one of the guys the Golden Knights could not bring back due to their tight cap situation. So he left as a free agent. He hasn't signed yet. So there was a lot of talk that Kessel could be a good third-line option for a team who needs some more help on their team. But a lot of teams, it sounded like, were wary to give Kessel a contract, given the fact that he still has his Ironman streak intact right now. But according to Elliot Friedman and a couple of other reports I've seen, Kessel sounds like he is willing to be okay with letting the Ironman streak go. He says, it sounds like at this point in time Kessel is all right with the Ironman streak. Last year he became the all-time Ironman streak leader, playing the most consecutive games in NHL history, and then he reached the 1,000 game mark. So last year he was able to, his Ironman streak became the longest Ironman streak in NHL history. He also reached the 1,000 game mark last year. It seems like he's pretty okay with the Ironman streak being broken if he's able to get a contract with a new team. So according to Elliot Friedman, it sounds like he's told teams that he'd be willing to forego the Ironman streak if he's able to get himself a contract, and he wouldn't be overly concerned with the fact that if a team scratched him, his Ironman streak would be over. He's not really too concerned with that now. He just wants to help a team out. So for a contending team who's looking for a guy who can help in their middle six, play third-line minutes, be a really good point producer, contributor, maybe be a spare every now and again, given the fact Kessel's getting up there in age, I do think there would be some interest in Kessel. I think there was not a lot of interest in Kessel just given the fact that a lot of teams were worried that if they were to sign him, they didn't want to break the Iron Man streak, if that was really important to him. But with the recent reports saying that Kessel's not overly concerned with the Iron Man streak, it sounds like there might be some more interest in Kessel now. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm not sure if Kessel will be going to camp on a PTO or if he'll be able to get an NHL level contract right out of the gate. But Kessel's going to be needing to watch out for the next little while. I think there's going to be some teams interested in Kessel. He probably would sign for somewhere between like under $1 million, maybe just over $1 million. So it wouldn't be an overly expensive guy to get. And I think on like a team third line, he could be a fantastic addition. So definitely look out for Kessel. Now that he's not really concerned with keeping the Iron Man streak going, it sounds like there could be some teams interested in him. And he could sign in the not-too-distant future. Going over to New York Islanders, yesterday Lou Lamoriello had a press conference, and he said that Zach Parise, who's a longtime player, played for a couple of teams, including the Islanders, the Wild. I think he also played for a couple of other teams, but yeah, he played a while for the Wild. He's played the last couple of years with New York. Is not going to be joining the Islanders in training camp, and he's going to be taking some time off for now. Lamoriello said that Parise is still with his family in Minnesota. He has not, at this point in time, come over yet. So it sounds like at this point in time, Parise is not going to start with the Islanders this year. He's a really good bottom six forward for the past couple of years now. Ever since arriving in New York, he's been a really good bottom six forward, but it sounds like at this point in time, he's not really ready to get back to the NHL. So according to reports, it sounds like Parise isn't retiring at this point in time. It just sounds like he's not ready to return to the NHL yet. So Lamoriello did not disclose a possible Parise return at some point during the season. Like maybe if Parise, after the season starts, maybe he has a change of heart. Maybe sometime in season he signs a new one-year deal with the Islanders. That's possible, but for the time being, it sounds like Parise will not be joining the Islanders in training camp. So the unsigned UFA will probably remain a UFA for the next little while. It doesn't sound like he's retiring, but for at least the first little bit of the season, it sounds like Parise will remain a UFA. So going to be interesting to see, and especially later on into the season, if he hasn't retired at that point in time, it'll be interesting to see if the Islanders wind up giving him an extension, if he still wants to continue to play. So going to be interesting to see, but for the time being, it sounds like Zach Parise will not be re-signing with the New York Islanders, and for the time being will be remaining UFA, and we'll have to see where it goes, if he retires, or if he does wind up signing a shorter-term deal later in the season. Going over to a couple of captains that have recently been named. Now, there were 10 teams as of this offseason who did not have a captain. That is the Anaheim Ducks, who had not had a captain since Ryan Getzlaf retired in 2022. That is the Arizona Coyotes, who had not had a captain since they traded Oliver Ekman-Larsson in 2021. The Boston Bruins, who lost captain Patrice Bergeron to retirement this offseason. That is the Calgary Flames, who lost Mark Giordano as captain 2 off seasons ago to the Seattle Kraken in the expansion draft. That is the Chicago Blackhawks, who lost captain Jonathan Toews to free agency and possibly retirement. Not exactly sure at this point, this offseason. The Flyers, who lost Claude Giroux in a trade a couple of years ago, late in 2022. The Kraken, who traded captain Mark Giordano also in 2022. The Blues, who traded captain Ryan O'Reilly in season this past year around the trade line. The Vancouver Canucks, who traded Bo Horvat, their captain, this past year around the trade line. And the Winnipeg Jets, who stripped Blake Wheeler of their captaincy before last year's season started. So there was a lot of teams who don't have captains right now, and there was a lot of talk that some of these teams would wind up having captains before season starts. And recently we've had 2 announcements to name new captains for 2 West Canadian teams. That is the Vancouver Canucks and the Winnipeg Jets. Now, as we talked about on Saturday, it sounded like Quinn Hughes might be the captain of the Vancouver Canucks. We said that Elliot Friedman said that. I said that would be a fantastic addition if it did happen, and it has happened, as the Vancouver Canucks named Quinn Hughes the next captain of the Vancouver Canucks. Apparently, he's also the first U.S.-born captain in Vancouver Canucks history. So that's a really good accomplishment for him. He's just a fantastic offensively gifted defenseman. He's a really good forward. He sort of really took on another leadership role after the Canucks traded Horvat. And I think he's a fantastic addition for the Canucks captain. Now, he is signed on a longer-term deal. That might have explained why he got a little more consideration instead of Elias Pettersson, given the fact Pettersson's entering the final year of his deal. But I think it was really going to be one of Hughes, maybe Pettersson or maybe Miller. I think one of those three are probably going to get the captaincy. I think Hughes is the right choice. He's a really good defenseman. He's an offensive leader. He's a leader on and off the ice. I think he's going to be a fantastic captain for this Vancouver Canucks team. So, in my eyes, the young defenseman really does deserve that captaincy, and I think he should definitely thrive being the captain of the Vancouver Canucks. And then recently, just before I started recording this video, there was another announcement for a captaincy, and this for the Winnipeg Jets. Ever since they stripped Blake Wheeler of the captaincy last year, they have not had a captain, so they didn't have a captain for the entire year last year, and they have now named new captain Adam Lowry. Lowry's the team's probably third-line center last year. He's a really good physical forward. He is one of the team's leaders on and off the ice. I think he had an A last year. He's a really big piece of that organization. He signed for a longer-term deal. I think he signed for the next 4 or 5 seasons. He's a really good piece in the Winnipeg Jets organization. I think he's a fantastic piece for the captaincy. I could have seen them go with a guy like Josh Morrissey. I could have seen them try and go Scheifele if they were able to get a contract extension done. But in my eyes, I think Lowry's probably another good option as well. Like I said, Lowry's a decent third-line center. He can probably be a second-line center if need be. He's a more physical type forward. He's a leader. He's definitely one of the Jets' leaders in the locker room. Definitely one of the Jets' leaders on the ice. In my eyes, he's probably a really good option to be the Jets' captain. So out of the 10 teams who did not have a captain after this start of free agency, 2 have now been able to name captains in Vancouver with Hughes and Winnipeg with Lowry. And I think both those guys are going to be fantastic captains for the Jets and Canucks. Both are really good leaders on and off the ice, and I think both are going to be fantastic additions for them. But now we still have 8 teams left without captains in Anaheim, Arizona, Calgary, Chicago, Boston, Philly, Seattle, and St. Louis. And it's going to be interesting to see if any of these other 8 teams do wind up making a captain before the season starts in about a month's time. So, going to be interesting to see, but good to see the Canucks have named Hughes captain and the Jets have named Lowry captain. And lastly, we're going over to a couple of trade rumors to discuss here. We're going to be discussing some things that we could be seeing later in this season surrounding teams like the Oilers, Penguins, the Sabres, and the Maple Leafs. So we'll start here with the Edmonton Oilers. There have been a couple of reports recently that I've seen suggesting that the Edmonton Oilers 2024 first-round pick may be on the table going into the 2024 NHL trade deadline. Now, there's been a couple of reports I've seen recently from different sources saying that they would not be shocked if the Edmonton Oilers 2024 first-round pick was on the table heading towards the rumored March 8th trade deadline. And it sounds like the trade deadline this year will be March 8th. So that's going to be interesting to see. It hasn't been officially confirmed yet, but that's sort of the consensus right now that is going to be the trade deadline date, March 8th this year. So going to be interesting to see if that really does wind up being the date. But going back to Edmonton, we talked about a little while ago Philip Broberg, how he could be a possible trade option for the Edmonton Oilers should they be wanting to move him. The deadline as possible a trade piece, and it looks like they may be willing to move their 2024 first-round pick as well. Definitely, I see the reasoning for Edmonton. There's holes, according to a couple of people. They have some holes in their bomb sticks, maybe on the right wing. They have some holes on the right side of their defense, and they have some holes possibly in net, depending on how Campbell plays this year. So they do have a couple of holes on this team, even with the firepower that's brought by Draisaitl and McDavid. So they could definitely use some insurance in some different places on that team. So, I mean, there would probably be a ton of players that this team could try and get around the trade line that would really help them. I mean, there's probably a couple of decent right shot defensemen who could help in their top 4. There's probably a couple of decent middle 6 forwards who could help. If their goaltending's not doing too well, you got guys like Hablgewachs and Gibson who could be available closer to the trade line. I think there's a couple of options there for the Edmonton Oilers. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I would not be shocked if their 2024 first-round pick was available. We saw this past year they were willing to move their first-round pick in the Matthias Ekholm trade. So like I said, I would not be shocked at all if their 2024 first-round pick was on the table, if Philip Broberg was on the table. This seems to be like a year where Edmonton needs to go for it. And I think if they were to move their first-round pick or Philip Broberg to improve this team and get them even better odds to not only make the playoffs this year or win them around, but to be an actual cup contender and get as close as they can to winning a Stanley Cup this year, I think they would definitely do it. So keep your eye on the Edmonton Oilers towards the trade line. If they're in a playoff spot, competing for playoffs, have a couple of holes on that team, look for their 2024 first-round pick to possibly be on the table as a possible trade chip. Going over to the Pittsburgh Penguins, there's been some talk recently that maybe not right now around training camp before our season starts, but maybe closer to trade deadline, the Pittsburgh Penguins may look to try and improve some spots. Their bottom six is not the best at this point in time. They do have a couple of decent bottom six forwards, but they also have a couple of older guys like a Jeff Carter or Lars Eller who may not be the best right now in the bottom six role. So I could see them look to try and add some bottom six help. According to some reports, it sounds like they could look to add a bottom six forward, maybe a third pair of defensemen as well. We know their top four is stacked right now, but the right side on the third pair of the defense is not the best, and they're probably going to have like a left shot like Ty Smith, or one of the lower end right shot defensemen like a Mark Friedman or Chad Rudy will play on that third pair right now, and that's probably not ideal. So towards the deadline, if they still have some cap space that they can work with, it'll probably be still a challenge, but if they have some cap space, I could definitely see them trying to improve the right side on that third pair or the bottom six. I think that would be some possible areas the Penguins could improve on, so definitely check out the Penguins closer to the deadline. If they are in a race for a playoff spot like we all think they probably will be, I definitely do expect the Penguins to try and improve that team if they can, and a bottom six forward help or some help on the third pair for the right side, I would not be too shocked if they will be interested in trying to move that. The cap's probably going to be the biggest thing they're going to have to work through, but I think there's definitely be some interest there to improve that team around the trade line. Going over to a couple of other ones, these haven't been really rumors that have been mentioned, but these are a couple of things I think that could be happening. Buffalo, in my opinion, I'm not sure if they were going to add a top four defenseman or a goalie before the start of the season. I think it's more than likely that they'll probably go into the season the way they are right now. I wouldn't be shocked if they did try to add a top four defenseman before the season starts, or maybe like another goalie to help with guys like Levi and Luukkonen. But I also wouldn't be too shocked if they went into the season the way they are right now, and maybe they try and add in season. I think Buffalo's going to be a pretty good team this year. So if they are hovering around the playoff mark come trade deadline time, I could see them be willing to move some pieces to try and improve their team. I could definitely see them look for a top four right shot defenseman around the trade line. If you look at their team, they still have a really good defense, like I've said. They have Samuelsson, Power, Dahlin. They brought in Clifton, they brought in Eric Johnson, they still have Yoki Haru, they have Bryson, they have Stillman, they have a pretty good decor, but they could probably use another veteran top four defenseman. I know I've been linked to Hanifin for a while. Hanifin's a left shot defenseman, most of their defensemen are left shots. I would not be too shocked if they would look for a more right shot defenseman, who's maybe more of a defensive minded defenseman, and could be a help if they were to make it in the playoffs. So I'd be looking at guys like maybe Chris Tanev or Brett Pesce in the trade market closer to the deadline. Both are more defensive-minded defensemen. They're both really physical, hard to play against defensemen, who I think will be a fantastic addition either on the first or second pair, maybe paired with a guy like Dahlin or Power. So in my eyes, if they don't do anything in the next couple of weeks, I could definitely see closer to the deadline, and maybe in February or March, them go after a right shot defenseman like a Tanev or a Pesce. Maybe they try and move a first or second round pick, depending on where they are in the standings. They do also have a lot of decent forward prospects. Not all of them are probably going to make the Buffalo Sabres roster, so maybe move a guy like Payne Krebs, maybe move a guy like Casey Middlestad, maybe move a guy like Isaac Rosen, Noah Ostlund. They have a ton of forward prospects. They're not all going to make the Buffalo Sabres roster long term, so maybe they move like a young forward prospect, first or second round pick, maybe a younger defenseman like a Henry Jokiharju. Maybe move all these guys as like a trade package for like a Tanev or a Pesce. I think that would be a possible option. So Buffalo, if they're doing well towards the trade line, I would not be too shocked if they haven't yet to be looking to acquire a top four defenseman, possibly in the final year of their deal. And is there some possibility that William Nylander could actually be moved to the trade line? Now, there's a lot of talk that Nylander could wind up going to the season in the final year of his contract, not signed yet. I think that's growing likelier and likelier the closer we are to the season, and that would be a really scary situation for Maple Leafs, because there's a possibility he could walk for nothing in free agency. So is there a possibility that the Leafs could move him in season? I really struggle with that idea. I know it's been mentioned a couple of times that they might be willing to move him, just given the fact that I don't want to lose him for nothing in free agency. But if the Leafs are doing really well, like I expect them to do, they're one of probably the better teams in the league again in the regular season. They're doing well. They're not going to want to subtract heading into the playoffs. The only way they're probably going to move Nylander in season while they're doing well is if they can get a really good player back in return. And I don't see that happening. So if they move Nylander closer to the deadline, that might set them back going into the season. And I don't think they really want to do that going into the season. So if that's the case, I'm not sure if Nylander will be traded at this point in time. I think he has to be traded probably before the start of the season, because I think if we get into the season and the Leafs start doing well and they're heading towards the playoffs again, I don't think they're going to want to subtract Nylander off their roster. At that point in time, I think they'd probably use him as their own rental, and they're going to probably see if they can try and re-sign him. And if they can't, then they might not be able to. So it's going to be interesting to see. But if the Leafs do not trade Nylander in the next couple of weeks before season starts, I really do wonder if Nylander does get traded this season. I find it difficult to see Nylander get traded in season if the Leafs are already doing so well this year. So it's going to be interesting to see. That's all I'm going to talk about here today. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments. What do you think of Hughes and Lowry being named captain? What do you think of the Kessel and Parise situations? Do you see the Edmonton Oilers' first-round pick in 2024, possibly Philip Broberg, being on the block if they are possible trade chips for the Oilers? Do the Penguins try and add a bottom six forward or third pair right shot defenseman before the season starts? Do the Buffalo Sabres add top four right shot defenseman like Tanev or Pesci closer to a trade deadline if they don't add a defenseman before the season starts? And do you see the Leafs being able to possibly move Nylander in season? Personally, I can't see Nylander be moved in season if he's not moved before the start of the season, just given the fact that I don't think the Leafs will want to subtract. And if that's the case, is it possible that Nylander doesn't get moved before the start of the season, doesn't get moved in season, and possibly walks as a free agent? Definitely. Love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. But that's all I'm going to talk about for today. Remember to like this video, and if you really liked it, remember to subscribe down below. Also, the blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So definitely check that out. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. And I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.